So, question 3, Don asks, I have a question from Jim that states, I think I have penetrated the mystery of my lifelong anger at making mistakes. I think I have always been aware subconsciously of my abilities to master new learnings, but my desire to successfully complete my mission on Earth has been energized by the Orion group into irrational and destructive anger when I fail. Could you comment on this observation? Ra says, we would suggest that as this entity is aware of its position as a wanderer, it may also consider what pre-incarnative decisions it undertook to make regarding the personal or self-oriented portion of the choosing to be here at this particular time-space. This entity is aware, as stated, that it has great potential, but potential for what? This is the pre-incarnative question. The work of sixth density is to unify wisdom and compassion. This entity abounds in wisdom. The compassion that it is desire of balancing has, as its antithesis, lack of compassion. In the more conscious being, this expresses or manifests itself as lack of compassion for self. We feel this is the sum of suggested concepts for thought which we may offer at this time without infringement. So, Ra picks its words very careful. And first of all, let's get into Jim's question. This is something I'm very familiar with because I could say that I identify myself as somebody like that, or at least I used to identify myself as somebody like that. And I can, at this point in my process, I can still see the behaviors bubbling, but I don't allow them, of course, to fester, say, in me. They just bubble, and I just see them as the thoughts that they are. But before getting into my own experience, Jim is asking about his propensity of getting angry when he fails at something, because he knows his potential. So this, again, is when we feel frustrated by not accomplishing something, knowing that we can do way better, that we can do things better, that we have that potential, but we get frustrated and angry. And another important part of Jim's question is that he includes the Orion group as part of the element that exacerbates this behavior in him. Now let's pick the words that Ra used here, because I think it's important. They say, we would suggest that as this entity is aware of its position as a wanderer, it may also consider what pre-incarnative decisions it undertook to make regarding the personal or self-oriented portion of the choosing to be here at this particular time space, which means think about or reflect on your decisions as to why you came here, knowing that you're a wanderer. Why did you come here? What was your purpose? This is something that only you can answer, of course. And so reflect on that. Become aware of what were your decisions to come here. You can feel this. This is you. I mean, you don't have to go to a guru, read books, or watch YouTube videos to find this out. You only need to ask yourself. And so, what we find is that so they say this entity is aware, as stated, that it has a great potential, but potential for what? So this is, again, trying to poke Jim into asking himself that question. And Ra says, potential for what? This is the pre-incarnative question. Potential for what? What did you bring to the table here? What is it that it is that you brought? And so on the second paragraph, they say the work of sixth density is to unify wisdom and compassion. So I think they let the cat out of the bag here with saying that maybe Jim is sixth density, because that's the work of sixth density. But again, no, I'm speculating because this could also be fifth density. The work of sixth density is what you're trying to understand in fifth density, right? Just like we're trying to understand love and compassion, which is the work in fourth density, or the status in fourth density. And the same thing happens from 56, so I don't know. In any case, Ra says that this entity abounds in wisdom, so that's an overabundance of wisdom, of which I am also very familiar with. And this doesn't mean that I have a lot of wisdom, but rather that there is an imbalance between wisdom and compassion in myself. And I'm talking about myself now. But this is Jim as well. I think we all can relate to this. And I'll mention something else at the end of this paragraph. And so the compassion that it is desirous of balancing has as its antithesis. So basically saying that the compassion that Jim wants has as a manifestation of its opposite a lack of compassion. So this is our behavior when we get angry with ourselves, when we get frustrated, is a lack of compassion for the weaknesses of the self, or those things. Again, weakness is not something like a disability. It's a potential for strengthening, right? We're not talking about human weakness or physical weakness. We're talking about metaphysical one. And so in the more conscious being, this expresses or manifests itself as lack of compassion for self. That's what I just mentioned right now. We feel this is the sum of suggested concepts for thought. Okay, so this is all we can say before infringing upon Jim's free will. So as a true master that Ra is just giving the tools and showing those things that they see. And the take home here that we can take is the lack of compassion that we can have with ourselves when we get frustrated with the things that we know we can do better. And you see, this is the opposite of what we talked about before, and I think it was session 44 or 45, where we talk about the martyr syndrome, which is the opposite, is an abundance of compassion and a lack of wisdom. That manifests as somebody who wants to just give itself. They're very naive, they're too compassionate, they're weak or sensitive rather to external stimuli and manipulation and all of this. This is the martyrdom effect that this imbalance has. So this is the opposite. This is the wisdom weakness, that it lacks compassion, and that manifests, of course, with others when it's exacerbated to that point. And you can see how in the healing process, and I can speak this for this myself, is that in the reversal process, let me call it the reversal process of I used to treat other people with lack of compassion because of my own frustration of I would project myself out there. And what happens is that you stop doing that because you realize how harmful that is for others. But you don't realize how harmful it is for you, and you continue to do it to yourself. But then you catch yourself doing it to yourself, and then you just allow it to be. And you don't enter into conflict with it. You just allow it to be. If you're angry, then you're angry and you observe it. You're frustrated, and you observe it. This is the process of becoming aware of your own lack of compassion. And so naturally, what balances it out is compassion for self. You begin to see the entity frustrated, just like you would see a child that is frustrated, and you don't treat it with disdain or some negative energy, let's just call it. So you begin to have compassion for yourself. One of the things that I think is clarified here is that Jim mentions the Orion group, and Ra has nothing to say about the Orion group. This reminds me of people who, when first presented with the raw material, and hey, I'm here, that was me at the beginning, I would think that a lot of the things that were happening to me were propitiated by the Orion group. And I never felt completely under attack, but I felt that a lot of those things were the influence of the Orion group. But the truth of the matter is that while the Orion group makes use of your weaknesses, they don't provoke the weaknesses. You are your own weakness. And likewise, you are your own healer and strengthener. So this is all about you. It has nothing to do with the Orion group. I get a lot of people asking me or saying, I feel like I'm under attack by the Orion group. I think the Orion group has it for me because I keep having these dreams, and the dreams are of negative this and that. All the Orion group can do is distort that which exists. Distort it further. So if you have some weakness or sensitivity, they will make use of that. But you are the one originating it. So you see here, Ra makes no mention of this because they go straight to the source, and the source of all of this is Jim. So how does Jim feel about himself? And I think this is a much more insightful way than, and I love it from the different channelings and the people that make readings on you and so on, where they will externalize things and they won't go to the heart of the essence of it, which is you, and explore yourself, right? I think that's the most efficient way to become aware of your own evolved soul, and from there then take charge. So this is really appropriate for people who are at least those who are like Jim or me, who have had this issue in the past, and what's begging is just more compassion with the self. Forget about compassion with others without compassion for the self. You're working backwards here, which is, I'm not saying don't have compassion for others, of course. I'm saying that forget about it if you don't have compassion for yourself. So whenever you catch yourself being nasty at you, or feeling down because of some self-judgment, then try to seek the antithesis of that lack of compassion, which is compassion, is love, is understanding, is nurturing of the self. So all right.